Have you ever thought about whether the culture and the values of a school match your own, of where you wish your child to experience their learning? Ethos is what most schools thrive for, where a young person feels included, safe and respected, as well as having their achievements and contributions valued and celebrated. This is really important, especially when taking into consideration diversity, where you've got young people that might have neurodiverse needs or perhaps a physical disability or even medical conditions such as ADHD or autism. But what happens when your child is experiencing difficulties and the credibility of a school's ethos is in question? Hi, my name is Brenda and I'm a parent mentor and a fellow parent. I support parents raising children with individual needs and differences to stay empowered whilst they navigate through procedural challenges. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why the school ethos is really important and something that should be taken into consideration. So firstly, what is an ethos? The moral nature, set of ideas or beliefs of a person or a group. It provides an indication of the culture or the character of those within, in this case, the school, the ability to be trustworthy and whether they are credible. When things go wrong, it's very easy for credibility to be tarnished, and schools don't want that. They want to be known as being inclusive. Information about a school's ethos can be found on their website. However, print alone is not necessarily a good indicator to determine what the school's ethos is like. So another way of exploring that would be perhaps attending parents' evenings or open days. Because as parents, we need to feel that we can trust that the people that we leave our children in the hands of are credible and trustworthy. And there are ways of doing that, perhaps looking at Ofsted reports, league tables, or even word of mouth when taking into consideration what is important to us. For some of us, this might be faith, the fact that it's local. There are some cases where you're not necessarily aware about whether the values match what you want for your child moving forward. For example, in my case, I didn't know that my son was going to have a diagnosis of autism or ADHD and later on down the line of other conditions as well, because at the time when he was in reception, I was still seeking information about his diagnosis. So for me, neurodiversity or inclusion were not at the forefront of my thoughts. But at the same time, I would feel that legislations and things like that were a given, and this was something that would be included within any child's experience of education. Unfortunately, our lived experience showed that this wasn't to be the case. The structure and the ethos of a school remains pivotal in terms of a child's overall well-being. And the reason this is because it creates trust. So how is trust built? And the first thing to consider is consistency. Not just when Ofsted is coming or perhaps when something needs to be seen as being done. So in my experience, this is where I started to question the ethos of a school. So I was looking at schools that could be possibly considered for my child to attend when he reached secondary school. And knowing that he had conditions of autism and ADHD at the time, there were specific things that I was looking for in terms of the school's values. And what I recall was one particular time where I was told that a school had a good record and a good way of supporting young people with autism within their mainstream secondary setting. And what I was told in this particular school, that room 506 was where the young people that have autism or neurodiverse needs would go to receive that support. So I was very keen during my tour to actually explore this room and see what it was about. But I was very mindful of how that would be perceived amongst everyone within the school. So I asked the tour guide, which usually tends to be a year 7 pupil. He shared with me that 506 was on the other side of the building. He also shared with me that 506 was where all the naughty kids go. Now, for me as a parent, I like to feel that everything is actually linked together. So if the children within the school are perceiving that room to be somewhere where naughty children go, that has an impact on how my son would be perceived. The school is not just about my child having one-to-one with professionals, it's also with his peers, and the environment is really important. So I need to ensure that there is consistency across the board in terms of how people perceive things and what the experience would be. And this really was an important indicator for me to determine the culture and the ethos of the school. And the second thing is strong integrity. Now, An example where I can share the meaning of this was in our experience. My son went to a primary school within our area that was particularly known for being really good for supporting young people with physical disabilities. The school told me that they pride themselves that disabilities was something that they really encouraged, as every child was to feel included, and they really showed that through the support and the tools that they provided for young people that had physical disabilities. So as a parent, that made me feel content in knowing that this is something that the school takes into consideration and it's an important factor for them. Our experience didn't actually replicate that. My son was perceived as having a learning disability, so his autism was known as a disability, with autism being known as a hidden disability. And what I noticed was that things in that particular school were going overlooked, were being missed, and were being perceived as something other than the actual disability. And the school were very vocal in expressing that they weren't able to meet the needs of my son's condition. This allowed me to question the values and the ethos of what I knew the school to have in terms of what our lived experience was. That's the reason why I share this, because it's really important not just to look at the policies, but also to do additional research. Trust is important for everyone to feel content, including myself and my child. So when it's misused or it's broken, it's very difficult to get back. But I'm not saying that's completely impossible, but it does require a lot of feeling empowered and moving through it in order to do so. I've worked with many professionals, teachers and people from the local authority and support workers that are really passionate about supporting young people and using ethos and values that connect with themselves individually to support the children that they serve. And I've also spoken to many parents and family members who have spoken about schools that their children have attended that has some really positive ethos, ones that they would make recommendations about. That's when you know how important that an ethos can make towards your child's progress. That's why it's really important to be clear about your values so that they match the school's ethos and your own, because you want your child to be surrounded by those values in their experience as they learn. When we collaborate and we communicate with professionals, it's really important that we're all on the same page and we're working towards the same thing. That's why I'm really passionate about us parents recognising the nuances that we experience so that we are able to stay empowered and move through these complex, difficult conversations that we might have, so that we ensure that our children's progress stays on track and they have the best chance to succeed despite their individual differences. So if you like this video, why not take a look at some of my other videos? And if you're thinking about working with a mentor, why not get in touch? My details are below. But for now, stay focused, stay empowered and keep creating progress. Thank you for listening.